authoritarianism. I think I started a little bit too early. That's okay. We are broadcasting live on so many platforms right now. We're up on Spotify. We're on YouTube right now. We're on Twitch, Substack, TikTok. I can't figure out how to do Instagram without having another device sitting in front of me, which is just not going to happen today. So, good morning. I'm so happy that you're here. If this is your first time tuning into the show, we're a daily news show here on The Ignition. We broadcast on the Rebel Radio Network, broadcasting on WARN, the Weirdos American Resistance Network. Of course, my lawyer. Let me just get a few things out of the way. Would want me to advise you that we are not broadcasting on any AM or FM frequency, and that at the Ignition News, Rebel Radio, we do not advocate for or promote any violence. See, disclaimer has been given. Ha! Fuck you, Brendan Carr. Anyways, welcome to the Ignition News, everyone. I'm so happy that you're here. I am going to ask you multiple times today to do something. We're trying to cross the next threshold on Spotify. So I'm going to ask you to go ahead and follow us on Spotify so you can get the daily news updates. If you can't make the live show, of course, I fully expect you to head over to your favorite podcasting platform and download and support the episodes. Leave comments. You can even leave mean comments if you want. We'll read them on the show. So yeah, welcome to the Ignition News, everybody. It's very good to have you. I just want to give a big shout out to whoever decided to shred trees outside of my house right now. That's very nice of them. They decided that it was the time to do their yard maintenance, which, you know, you got to maintain the yard. I can't disagree with that. But thank you, neighbor. I appreciate you. Anyways, good morning. We do have a lot of things to talk about. Before we get into the news, I do want to talk about denial and probable denial. And that is because we are seeing things happen in this country right now. And I think that it is important that we start to recognize not only patterns, but what people did about those patterns in the past. So let us talk about examples from Germany. The first one, Kristallnacht, November 9th and 10th, 1938. Ordinary Germans watched Jewish-owned businesses burn, they watched synagogues destroyed, and they watched their own neighbors dragged into the streets. As this happened, police stood by, and many bystanders helped themselves to looted goods in the next morning. Surveys conducted after the war show that most Germans in urban areas knew that deportations were happening. They saw the trains running through their city centers. They saw the cattle cars full of human beings in plain sight. Many assumed, or at least they said, that Jews were being relocated to the east and chose not to ask follow-up questions. What is the mechanism here? The mechanism is willful incuriosity. This is our phrase of the day, one of our phrases of the day. They had enough information to know something was wrong, but not enough information, and not asking the next question prevented them from seeing what was happening. The action item there is to name what you see. If you see police in your community, if you see ICE in your community, name it for what it is, call it for what it is. Now, I want to give you an example of that. Here in Las Vegas, Customs and Border Patrol had announced that they intended to go to a career fair at a local college, UNLV. When community members saw this, they named it, they called it out, and they flooded the inboxes of UNLV with resistance emails demanding that UNLV not allow Customs and Border Patrol on the UNLV campus. And our latest reporting as of this morning is that, in fact, that is the case, that UNLV did not allow Customs and Border Patrol on the campus. Second one, it's about doctors, professionals. Before the mass extermination of the Jews, the Nazis ran Action T4. It was the systemic murder of disabled Germans. This happened in German hospitals, and German nurses administered these lethal injections. The doctors signed the paperwork authorizing this, and families of these victims received form letters saying that their loved ones had died of pneumonia. Many families knew that the letters were fake, but the timing didn't add up, and they were cremated without their consent. Of course, these families didn't lodge official complaints against the government because doing so would have been considered treasonous and dangerous. What is this mechanism? It is called institutional normalization. When the state puts a bureaucratic version or veneer over an atrocity, it allows people to defer to paperwork and action items. So the action item there for you, follow the paperwork. When the government produces systems like they did in UNLV to allow for the institutional oppression of immigrants, gays, any disenfranchised group, the trans community, They do it by using institutions. An institution like, for example, here, UNLV. You call it out, you name it, and you do everything in your power to prevent it from happening. And then, of course, there are the businessmen. International Business Machines, IBM. IBM provided the punch tabulation systems used to identify, sort, and track Jewish populations across occupied Europe. Hugo Boss made SS uniforms. Dozens of German corporations used concentration camp labor. I'm sorry, I'm having difficulty speaking today. Volkswagen, Bayer, Siemens, their executives knew, their shareholders knew, their employees knew. At the lower level, of course, German business owners who employed Jewish workers were pressured through boycotts and social ostracism to fire them. Most did. They did it quietly. Oh, it wasn't because they were Jewish. It was because of their performance. They were late to work, this kind of thing. What is the mechanism? The mechanism is economic complicity normalized through each small step. Each individual decision seemed like a small step. Each bolt ordered for the machine that was used to build the concentration camp was simply a worker filling out a form to order a bolt. Each tire put on a Volkswagen was simply a tire providing a job. The person who took the rubber and turned it into wheel which hit the road was simply a tire maker. They were not a Nazi. But in fact, they were a Nazi. And there is a word for Germans in the from 1933 to 1945 who stood quietly by, who watched what was happening, who chose not to actively participate in politics. In America, they would say, "We don't do politics." And they put their heads down. They saw the trains going through the towns. They saw their sons and loved ones dying in a pointless war. And they put their head down. They went to work every single day. They filled out the forms and paperwork when their loved ones were killed because they were disabled. They took the ashes, buried them, cried over them, but didn't make too much noise. They went to work. They worked at IBM. They worked at Volkswagen. They worked at Hugo Boss making uniforms. Someone, after all, has to make the uniform. It was my job before the war. It was my job before the war. I can't go hungry. There's a German word for these people who didn't actively participate in the war, these people who didn't actively go on the front line, who didn't actively pull any levers in a concentration camp. And the German word for those people is Nazi. The final action item before we get into today's story is believe people when they tell you who they are. Interesting, yes? Welcome to the Ignition News. I don't know if that was heavy or not. Did that feel like it was heavy for you? It didn't feel heavy for me. It just felt like telling the truth. We have 4 stories today. On the Ignition News, we cover 4 to 6 stories to tell you what's going on in the world. The reason we do this is I don't want you to have this amygdala hijack, breaking news. I'm reporting news from the airplane bathroom because I need to stretch it over a minute on TikTok to make money. We want you to have action items that you can do something with process, procedure, action, and information. So let us get into our first story. You've no doubt heard this. Breaking news, of course. I said it. We have a major arrest. Prince Andrew, 66 years old. He used to be called Prince Andrew. He used to live in a mansion. He used to be the favorite child of Queen Elizabeth. Today is his 66th birthday. And on his 66th birthday, he was arrested by police in Norfolk, England. He was arrested on misconduct. Now, he's very famously one of the abusers in the Epstein files. His crimes are some of the most documented and, of course, the most well-known and atrocious. And there is certainly justice here. Even the king himself has demanded that justice must prevail in the system. This is the first large-scale arrest of any kind, of any official, since, of course, Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein. It is a major individual arrested in connection with the Epstein files. But if you're thinking it is because of the Epstein files or because of his sexual misconduct with underage women, unfortunately, that's not the case. Of course, Prince Andrew famously signed a non-disclosure agreement with one of his victims. He was arrested instead for violating state secrets, sharing confidential information with Jeffrey Epstein. Official misconduct. It is connected to the Epstein files in that Prince Andrew was revealed to have been sharing classified information while holding official public office. It is rooted in his betrayal of his public office, leaking state intelligence to a known sex criminal, and we all know what the connection was there. My point is, this may seem externally as not connected or as a non-victory, but it is actually a blueprint and a plan on how we begin to hold these men accountable. Each of these men clearly thinks that the law does not apply to them. And when a man thinks that the law does not apply to him, he finds violations of laws all over and he treats them like a buffet of lawlessness. In this instance, Prince Andrew's crimes against the state were so blatant, so obvious, so undeniable that the state had to hold him accountable. We will find that this is the case with more and more and more of these men, and we must demand that we hold them accountable. If this Justice Department in our country does not have the courage, the stones to hold these men accountable for the clear crimes they committed against these women, and likely also young men, like that's also very likely, then we must demand that state officials, local officials, start arresting these fuckers for the other things. Tax evasion, property crime, leaking information. Whatever we can do to hold them accountable. If we have to get them on a tax crime, let's go. Let's do it. There is no small victory, no large victory in these files. These are horrible crimes. I've told you this before. I find it deeply uncomfortable to talk about the specifics of the incidences in the Epstein files. If that is information you need, you will have to get that from someone else. Because when I read it, I find it difficult to even think about, let alone speak out loud. I'm sorry if you feel that is me being not authentic to the story. I understand. I find it disturbing and I have a hard time even repeating it, which is not an indication that I don't take it seriously. It's an indication of how bad what is in these Epstein files is. The DOJ under Pam Bondi in America is protecting pedophiles. There are clear crimes and examples of men doing terrible things that at minimum demand an investigation. You cannot name accountability in the Epstein files aside from Jeffrey Epstein, and that remains one of the biggest mysteries in the history of this country. Ghislaine Maxwell has been transferred to some luxury prison where she is reportedly bossing her guards around, simply waiting for the president to pardon her. And the reality is, if you want to know what I think as soon as the midterms are over, Ghislaine Maxwell is getting a pardon. He's not stupid enough to pardon Ghislaine Maxwell before the midterms. That's all that's happening there. They put her in Club Fed, told her to sit tight, give her anything that she wants. And after the midterms, after whatever damage from the midterm happens, she's getting a pardon. Ghislaine Maxwell will walk free from that jail by no later than mid-2027. Mark my words. And that is an atrocity. It's an atrocity. While Prince Andrew was getting arrested, our president was overseas hosting his board of peace, his extortion board. But there's one problem with that, of course. Welcome to the Ignition News. Moving on to story 2. Probably seen multiple clips circulating this morning. We're talking raw documented video of the president of the United States falling asleep during his extortion racket called the Board of Peace. Now, if you're not familiar, basically countries had to pay like $1 billion to get on this board. There's no express stated purpose of what this is other than just apparently an extortion racket. He's holding a peace summit, as he calls it, while using that peace summit to openly threaten war with Iran. And he's circumventing the global international order in essentially a, crypto forum for international leaders. It's basically a board of compliance. What you have is the weak countries showing up that have accepted the terms of his bribe. He's grifting other countries. Apparently, he himself manages the admission fee, which is like $1 billion. And when he's not falling asleep at his board of peace, he is actively threatening war with Iran. So what do we do about it? Well, if you think the answer is to vote, I need to tell you about what's happening right now, and that is the SAVE Act. Moving on to story number 3, Susan Collins of Maine would like you to believe that she's a moderate. She'd like you to believe that she is just a check on the excess of the Republican Party. She'd like to take credit for breaking ranks with the president, and there have been times that she has done that, but she also became the 50th vote, the 50th Republican senator to announce support for the SAVE Act, the Safeguard America Voter Eligibility Act. You know, of many things that have happened this last year in 2025, 2026, the more I read about the SAVE Act, the more alarmed I am. And you will hear talking points about the SAVE Act simply saying, if you need ID to drive a car, what's wrong with having ID to vote? So what the SAVE Act does, to be very clear, the SAVE Act, or what's the acronym called again? Safeguard America Voter Eligibility Act. It demands citizenship, proof of citizenship in order to vote. A photo ID which proves citizenship. 52% of registered voters do not have an unexpired passport with their current legal name. 11% don't have access to their birth certificate. A passport application can take weeks and cost hundreds of dollars. If people are impoverished, there is no way you're getting a passport. 9% of all eligible voters do not have or cannot easily access documented proof of citizenship. But the biggest question here, of course, is the template. DHS, the Department of Homeland Security, and ICE have said in open court that real ID is not a valid form of citizenship, that it can be faked. They have said in court that when an ICE officer pulls someone over and they present them with a real ID, they do not consider that valid citizenship, and they can detain and possibly try to deport you. So let us be clear about the risk. The risk here is not you need to have an ID to vote. Some massive voter fraud scheme, of which, by the way, there is no proof of. In fact, there's significant proof in the opposite direction. What they're doing here is they are preventing poor people from voting. They are preventing homeless people from voting. They are preventing people who don't have access to this information and who do not have time. There are people who work 40, 50, 60 hours a week who are not going to have time to go get their real ID, to renew their passport, to find their birth certificate. Getting a registered birth certificate is a nightmare. And the SAVE Act requires it. You don't get to sign an affidavit. If you vote previously, you could sign an affidavit declaring that you were legally allowed to vote. And that was considered proof. Of course, that could be contested, all this stuff. But the SAVE Act is not about protecting voter information. The SAVE Act is about preventing legal immigrants from voting, poor people from voting, working men and women from voting, young people from voting. And of course, we know who all of those people tend to vote for. Wealthy white travelers, wealthy evangelicals who take their little cruise trips to Mexico, who have their updated passport, fresh with that Botox picture. They're not going to have any problem voting. But even if you bring an ID, mark my words, this government has openly said a real ID is not a valid proof of citizenship. So can the bill pass? Well, the filibuster still stands. Democrats are certain to try to filibuster this. You need 60 votes to cut off the filibuster, but they also have the nuclear option. Susan Collins needs to be removed from office. As you know, I support Graham Plattner. He's obviously made some stupid decisions in his past. Obviously. But if we can't learn, forgive, and move on, what is the point of all of this? I would rather have someone who knows that they made a stupid decision, who is a fighter, who's willing to get their teeth in the game, than someone who purports to be a saint, who cares more about billionaires or AIPAC and who isn't going to fight for me. And for those of you who always say, this is an interesting commentary line too, by the way, they say, oh, you don't live in Texas. You don't live in Maine. Why does it matter? You shouldn't be talking about this. Well, the answer is simple. Whether it's Texas senator or Maine senator or North Dakota senator or Nevada senator, each one of those 100 individuals has literally the power in their hands to stop the SAVE Act. And we have to demand that they do. But keep this in mind, MAGA. If you start cranking these levers, you have fundamentally changed the left in this country. You fundamentally changed me. This wave of Christian nationalist authoritarianism is radicalizing people. And I know what you're going to say. Oh, radicalize, scary word, whatever, blah, blah, blah. No. Millions of people in this country have woken up to understand what this government is actually about. Yesterday, we talked about the question, can you name something that your government has actually done for you that has benefited you recently? Most of us were unable to name anything. And of course, the government has and can do good things for people. But increasingly, this government, our government, is captured by the billionaires, captured by AIPAC, captured by special interest groups, and brazenly ignoring the needs of the working class. And if you want proof of that, let's get on to our next story. I want to talk about tariffs and small businesses. As you probably know, by the way, welcome to the Ignition News for anyone joining us. It's good to see you. As you well know, small businesses make up the lion's share of the American economy. When the president ran for re-election, he promised that he would be the right president for the working party, the small business owner. Of course, famously, Kamala Harris had a massive plan to encourage startups and small businesses, offering up to $50,000 in tax breaks for new businesses. This president has delivered to the backbone of America one thing: higher costs. He said that the countries of the tariffs would bear the cost. He said American workers and businesses would be protected. Today, JP Morgan released the data. So they analyzed a bunch of companies with revenues between $10 million and $1 billion and with less than 500 employees. And they found through that study that tariff payments for these companies tripled over the course of 2025. They began accelerating in April, Liberation Day, and it's wreaking havoc on supply chains. These are not Apple. These are not Amazon. These are not big, huge multinationals that can go give the president a fucking gold trophy like Tim Cook did. These are people who started a business in their garage. Maybe they have 100 employees. They're importing or they're creating something or they're bringing parts in through tariffs that they then put together. Or yes, they're reselling something that was made in China or Vietnam. That's the way it is right now. There is a separate filing from the New York Federal Reserve published last week showing that 90% of the economic burden from Trump's 2025 tariffs fell on American households and American small businesses, $1,300. The cost did not fall on China or Vietnam. The cost did not fall on India. The cost is falling on the American family. I want to ask, let's do some math here. Okay, let's do some math. Someone on the show, how frequently do you go through a dozen eggs? Anyone? There's like 2 weeks, a week. I don't know. We'll say a week. Okay. Let's do the math. A week. I agree. A dozen eggs a week. Okay. 52 eggs. 52 dozen eggs. All right. So egg prices by all accounts are down about $3. Let's just be very generous. Okay. So we'll do 52 times 3. So to save $156 on the price of eggs, which was that huge talking point, of course, from the election 2024, to save $156 on your eggs, you are paying $1,300 in tariffs. Congratulations on saving negative $1,500, $1,050, $1,150. I was told there would be no math. This is the flaw of their economic plan, their messaging. They are hoodwinking these people. And what the sad thing about it is like there's people who actually believe this. Of course, not to forget the fact that we're devastating small businesses, but when we can find money to give to Argentina, $40 billion to bail out Besant's friends, to bail out friends of the administration, oh, there's $40 billion right there. And of course, farmers who largely 70% voted for this president, now seeing their economic well-being collapsing. Farm bankruptcies are at their highest ever. But of course, they get a bailout. They can vote for disastrous economic policy that is literally killing the people who buy their eggs, their cattle, their wheat, their corn. And if they don't lose their farm to bankruptcy, which, to be very clear, a lot of you are losing your farms to bankruptcy, to JD Vance's companies that is buying up the land that your farm's on, selling it to fucking China, by the way. Saudi Arabia buying alfalfa from Arizona. They're growing alfalfa in Arizona. Do you know why they don't grow alfalfa in Arizona? Because it's bad for the water. They don't have enough water in Saudi Arabia to grow alfalfa. So do you know where they buy it from? The desert of Arizona. They grow alfalfa in a desert with water that they're stealing from other states in a drought to sell to Saudi Arabia. We are being robbed. They are robbing us in broad daylight. And they have the audacity to tell us while they are stealing from us, and not just us, from our children. I'm in it now, so I'm just going to go. My children will never have anything remotely resembling my already poor access to the American dream. I got the last chopper out of Nam being able to get a house with our family. We got the last chopper out of Nam. If we had waited 2 years or 3 years to buy a house, there is no way we could buy a house. And I recognize fully that a lot of people I know and I care about are in that position where they pay more to rent a 2-bedroom apartment or a 1-bedroom apartment than most people who bought a house pay for their mortgage payment. And they will never be able to get a house, even though they can afford it, even though they make more than enough money than one should be able to make to buy a house in the United States of America. They are stuck, constantly being extorted by the landlord class. And by the way, if you're a landlord, I don't want anything to do with you. But they're robbing us. And it's not necessarily about us, because I got the grays in my beard. I understand. Our children, the prosperity gap our children are going to be facing is enormous. And the worst part of it all is the worst people get to benefit from it. The slimiest, sleaziest dirtbags get to benefit from it. The difference for someone like Bezos on tariffs, the cost of food, the cost of clothing, it isn't even a fraction of a micro percentage of an 11th of a 10th of a percent of a fraction of a rounding error on a penny of the fortune that he has built. It isn't even dust in the wind on the interest that he compiles in 1 hour from his wealth. It isn't even close. These thieves, these sick weasels. And the money, the difference that someone has to have to just live in a 2-bedroom apartment run by some shithead landlord that's a fucking weasel. What they pay in relation to their earnings, a third, sometimes half of their earnings to live in some run-down apartment. No offense, I'm not trying to be derogatory when I say that, but that is the reality. These landlords don't care about you. They will let black mold grow in the corner and deny it all day long. A third of your income to live in an apartment. Not even a fraction of a decimal of. Jeff Bezos could walk by a $100 bill on the ground, and it would cost him more money to stop walking, pick up the $100 bill, than to just keep walking. That's how wealthy, obscenely wealthy he is. How much would $100 significantly impact your day today, right now? How much would you be able to breathe a little bit more right now? Just $100. This is a fight. It's a bare knuckle fight for the history, for the prosperity, and for the breath. Our children are being stepped on by these people. They are stepping on their necks. They're stepping on their necks to get the next billion, and I guess now $1 trillion. They're in an insatiable quest, these men. They're in an insatiable quest. Who will become the first trillionaire while we die in the ashes and smoke of their ruins? But today, a prince is in jail. The son of a queen behind bars. The collective strength, what remains of us, still continues to be orders of magnitude more than our oppressor. We simply choose not to use it. We allow the boot on our neck because we think and forget that there are 500 people around us who can lift the boot, who can lift us up and pull us out of this chaos. All of the stories we talked about have one thing in common: power protecting itself through a title or a flag. Or a crown. But then one morning in a snowy February, a car pulls up to a gate. It is the voice of accountability. And it may not be the accountability that we initially sought, but it is accountability nonetheless. I feel a great force rising among the working class. You are not a capitalist. You know this about yourself. Yes, you are not a capitalist. What capital do you have? You're not watching my show if you're a capitalist. You have value in your labor, your love, your life, your sweat, and your tears. It is being stolen from you. But I feel the collective wave of our rage. I can feel it. I see it more and more every single day. Rage can be scary. It is scary. Rage can be a symptom of fear, a symptom of anger, a symptom of uncertainty. But rage can be the voice of righteousness as well. And of course, as my lawyer would like me to remind you, on the Ignition News, we do not advocate or support violence. But man, can I hear your rage. So let us turn this rage into righteousness. That's the Ignition News today, everybody. It is February 19th, 2026. Please do me a favor. Do follow the show. It means a lot to me. Come back if you can. We appreciate